Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Vince Adamus with the Greater Cleveland Partnership, and welcome to our webinar on electric vehicle charging station grants. At GCP, we're happy to provide programs like this to help the business community and improve the economic climate of Northeast Ohio. Today, you'll be hearing from Nicole Sticka, our Vice President of Energy Services for the Greater Cleveland Partnership. She oversees a portfolio of energy services that includes utility procurement, comprehensive building energy audits, consultative project development, financing solutions, rebate administration, and sustainability consulting. She provides support services to businesses of all sizes. Nicole, take it away.
Great, thank you, Vince. So before we get started, I'd like to just take a moment to go over a few housekeeping items. As Vince said, my name is Nicole Sticka, and I'm going to be the webinar organizer for you today. We want to make sure today's presentation is extremely valuable for you, so we ask that you submit all questions by clicking on the question button in the control panel and typing in your question. In addition, we're also going to be asking for your participation. We'll be posting a few polling questions and ask that you respond accordingly. Thank you again for joining us today for a great discussion on electric vehicles and a unique opportunity to leverage a grant from the Ohio EPA. Today's webinar, as you can see here, is Electric Vehicle Charging Station Grant. It's an exciting opportunity that I'm pleased to see so many of you are interested in learning more about and hopefully bringing EV charging stations to your community or your development site. Our speaker today is Jimmy Smith, an account executive with ChargePoint. DriveOhio, an initiative of the Ohio Department of Transportation, has finalized a study to expand electric vehicles access throughout Ohio. The strategy identified various sites needed to build EV-friendly corridors throughout the state. And a key recommendation from the strategy is to have EV charging stations available and installed at least every 50 miles at strategic locations along the interstate, state, and U.S. route corridors. Specifically, today we're going to be talking about the Level 2 announcement, and this is the first of two from the Ohio EPA. Another $5 million in grant funding will be released for the direct current fast, or the DC fast, chargers in early 2021. The study identified, again, major arteries where these DC fast chargers will help fill gaps and thereby ease what experts will call anxiety for EV travelers. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jimmy. We welcome your questions throughout today's presentation and look forward to Jimmy's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate that introduction and getting us started off on this presentation. Again, yes, my name is Jimmy Smith. I'm with ChargePoint, and I'm based here in Columbus, Ohio, but I've worked throughout the Ohio and state of Ohio. So I do want to talk about the grants and how that money is going to be funded, but I feel like I owe it to you guys to explain how EV charging, how electric vehicles view EV charging, locations on how to plan to develop and implement EV charging into a site, pick those sites, what should be included in those sites, and then as well as what is available for that Ohio EPA grant. Sorry, first cup of coffee this morning. I'm working on it still. By that, I'll start, again, doing that market overview, showing where the vehicles are, where we're looking, where they EV drivers looking to charge their vehicle, how they charge the vehicle, and then what that grant provides and how that fits into that market space, what EV vehicles are doing. So to start, I love pointing out or starting off with this first slide, honestly, because I'm a history buff, and this is Cleveland, Ohio. So the Baker Motor Vehicle Company, based in Cleveland, Ohio, used to be the #1 producer of electric vehicles right around the turn of the last century. I believe this little article says it had 75 miles of range, which back then was easy enough to get around Cleveland and all the area. They used to ship these things out globally. So we're just resurgence in this EV market space, now coming around for a big second try at this. So I feel like I can't do an introduction into electric vehicles without touching on this vehicle. This is the Tesla Model 3. It is the #1 selling electric vehicle out there. It still produces, of the fully electric vehicles, the last number I saw, I think it was like 80% of them are sold are going to be this Model 3. And it's really just changed the way that people look at electric vehicles. I talked to my dad, and his impression of electric vehicles was like a golf cart that maybe had doors. Whereas now we've changed that topic, and I believe this is now what people believe is an electric vehicle, that Tesla. Other exciting things that I really believe are going to have an impact on this market and how it's going to revolutionize how people see electric vehicles and the amount of them that are coming on the road. The #1 selling vehicle in America right now is a Ford F-150. So until you produce an electric vehicle that matches or meets that spec of what an F-150 can do, you won't see full-scale adoption rate happening. So here, really, I mean, we have our local favorite of the Lordstown Motor out in Lordstown, Ohio. Another pickup truck is this Rivian R1T that's backed by a lot of Amazon and hedge funds companies and pension funds from Canada and America. So it has well-funded. The last one, I think it's 2 weeks ago I saw, they got $1.8 billion to help that company in their second round of funding. And then another example here being the Bollinger B2, which looks kind of like, you've seen those Jeeps out right now that have that pickup truck in the back. All three very exciting vehicles, as well as the Ford F-150 that's coming out in I think another year or two. But exciting that it's going to be able to take the truck market and then complement what's already happening on the light duty car market or sedan market, and just really make electric vehicles mass scale produced. And honestly, I think it's going to change how Ohio sees transportation. I don't think we could move on of talking about the vehicle market without talking about the Tesla Cybertruck. Love it or hate it, I call it the triangle on wheels, but it has 300,000 reservations already. It's faster, more reservations at a faster pace than what the Model 3 did, and the Model 3 is already 80% of the fully electric vehicle market. So this has the potential to be that second runner-up to that vehicle and really take over the triangle truck market, if you will. Another point that I just want to make about like the size and scope of this electric vehicle market. Currently, you can see here's the market share or total market capitalization of these different companies. You can see BMW being in there, Daimler in there, the Volkswagen Group, even Toyota at $189 billion. Tesla, this is as of last week, showed that it was $350 billion. So people are believing, if you believe that you vote with your money, people are voting that Tesla is going to be that biggest market of vehicles in the future and being able to take over that. They still are. They've taken the spot as #1 selling vehicle by dollars spent. In California, they were #1 vehicle by just units sold. That's a different area out there, but still, it shows that with that large market, it's still just #1 vehicle sold. It's still a significant number. So I like to point these out in the beginning just to show, we're looking at this funding that's coming out for Ohio EPA, but here's really this massive wave that we're going to be seeing coming in. So in the near future. So to talk about electric vehicles and what the EPA funding provides, I do want to designate or delineate what an electric vehicle is. So we essentially have what we call 3 different categories of electric vehicles. The first one, which we designate on the screen here, is a PHEV or plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. Mostly you would be able to compare it to like a Toyota Prius, but being able to plug it into a wall. So the ability to recharge itself from the batteries, but as well as extended range or recharge it from a gasoline engine as well. So Toyota Prius Prime is the example of that. They have, you can plug it into a wall, you can get that charge off of it from the grid as well as its battery. The #1 selling of this is probably the Chevy Volt, not to be confused with the Bolt. But it has we call these plug-in hybrids, so it can only use a level 2 charge or a level 1, and I'll explain that in some other slides. But it does not have the ability to use a DC fast charger. The second category here is a BEV, or battery electric vehicle. So here's a fully electric vehicle, no gasoline engine, but it does not use a DC fast charger. And then there are a battery electric vehicle that does use a DC fast charger. So commonly your Tesla, your Chevy Bolt with a B are the more common ones. Nissan Leaf is the other very common one. And then all the Tesla lineup. The reason I separate those two out is because there are a few models on the market that don't have the ability to use a DC fast charger. But most of them coming out now do. They're gonna get in the way of not using a DC anymore. I used to say it was about 50-50 between the plug-in hybrid versions and a fully electric version as far as like sales in Ohio. We have been tilting more towards the fully electrics, outpacing the plug-in hybrid vehicles. But there's also a slew of PHEV vehicles that are going to be coming onto the market as well, as manufacturers add them onto other vehicles they already make in their lineup, make it like a hybrid version and the plug-in hybrid version to just add on to their existing products. And I'll explain why that matters in the coming up slide here too. So charging station basics. Again, I want to touch on what this is a little bit because this affects what the Ohio EPA is providing as funding. But there's basically a new paradigm of what is electric vehicles. So we're all used to the familiar gasoline model. You know, you get up in the morning, you drive to work. When we used to do that, you know, you come home or pick up the kids, stop at the gas station, and come back home. Electric vehicles are a little different though. So it's more of what we call a top-off model. So you plug your car in, predominantly is going to be done at home. The next most common spot is going to be like at work or when you're out at locations or maybe going to the airport. And then, you know, when you're out shopping and then coming back at the end of the day. I equate this more to like just how you charge your cell phone, you know, mostly done overnight, then while you're at work or maybe out at the airport or other places, and then, you know, done again back at work. But so that's going to be probably 99% of what that routine is. And then about 1% of the time when vehicles are driving from like maybe here to Pittsburgh, you know, you got to go to Cleveland, Toledo, or Cleveland down to Columbus. You will use a DC fast charger, which more is equated to that depot model, you know, a gas station experience that we're familiar with. You get that fast charge, you're in and out of there in a quick amount of time, and then you go on your way. So there's kind of like the new model of how we look at that. So I do want to describe each of these. So we have a level 1, a level 2, and a DC fast charger. Essentially, we have 3 levels of charging. So a level 1 is any generic wall outlet. Every car comes with a cord to be able to plug into any of the billions of wall outlets across the United States. So the advantage is they're everywhere. The vehicle comes with that cord in the trunk of the car. I call it like the modern day spare tire. You know, they don't come with spare tires anymore, but now they come with this if you get in a pickle. The advantage is they're everywhere. The downside is it's a super slow charge. You're looking at 1 to 5 miles of range per hour, just depending on how many amps are in that plug. And I find a lot of people end up tripping a breaker because they've pulled too much power or something like that. But the more common one would be a level 2 charge. So this would be equivalent to like a dryer outlet, you know, being able to get a faster charge. You're looking at like 20 to 25 miles of range per hour. And if actually, you may not know, but the average Ohioan drives only about 24 miles a day. Even on the high end, you're still at like 42 miles a day. So most people will charge on a level 2 for only about 2 hours. And that gets them what they need for most days. You know, if they wait until every other day or every 3 days, they may be on there a little bit longer. But most people don't take the tank all the way down to empty like we're familiar with on gasoline. They top off just as like a day or every other day or something like that. And then finally, we have what we call as level 3 or DC fast charging. So in level 2 is actually a universal port. All vehicles on the market use the same plug. except for Tesla. Tesla has a proprietary plug, but when you buy a Tesla, you get that adapter back to the universal. Think of Apple. But there's an adapter that the Apple can work back onto like the Androids. On the DC fast charger, there's actually 3 standards. So this again is more like that gas station depot model. But here, I mean, there's not only like, you know, regular and diesel, there's also, I don't know, kerosene. So there's 3 different plugs, Tesla being Tesla. We have a combo, which is the North American or European standard. And then we have CHAdeMO, which is a Japanese kind of Chinese standard. At one point, I think CHAdeMO is probably going to go away, but until then, stations will come with 2 ports onto it, and it's going to be that combo and CHAdeMO. And then Tesla, again, has an adapter that goes back to the CHAdeMO plug. So that, you know, we'll be able to service all the market with those adapters. So the Ohio EPA fund is for level 2 charging. That would be that middle one. That's that universal standard. That's when people are plugging in, topping off, and going on their way. They do predict, or they will be coming out with a DC fast charging grant coming out next year sometime. And I'll touch on more of that when we get back and we get a little bit farther into this presentation. So other things to consider about EV charging is that it's a little bit different. And since that, you know, there is a top-off model, you're going to more places and charging more often, people use mobile apps to be able to find these locations. Quite literally, they're pretty small. I used to say they're the size of me, but I've gotten a little bit bigger. But they are, you know, easily could be hidden behind if like a truck or a tree was there. So they use mobile apps to be able to navigate to there, identify where those parking spots are at, and then even use payment processing systems through a mobile app or through a driver card. And by having that, it makes it more intelligent so that, you know, if there's only that 1 or 2 parking spots out in there and you are counting on that, you can see in real time if that parking spot is available to be able to be charged, so that, you know, you're not driving out of your way to find out that there's only that 1 spot there and it's already being used by somebody else. As well as smart features that can be, oh, this spot has just become available. You can come up and use your spot now. So the EV driver really will be needing the smart charging station to be able to plug in, to be able to get going. And station owners, now that they have this new portion or this new asset out there, they may need to control access or monitor usage or recover funds that could be, you know, for the electricity that's being provided out there. So some things to consider for planning of charging stations. I like this picture because it has that iconic Tower City in the background that really show like the 2 different history of like the past and the present coming together.
Sorry about that.
Some other things to consider.
Posted the poll really quick. So Jimmy, I apologize that it interrupted your slides, but this is our first polling question.
Did you see my train of thought, like as I was reading it?
So as we're planning for city development, I think this is an appropriate question. We'll give it just 15 more seconds. You can respond with your answer. Looks like we still have a couple more people responding. All right, I'm going to close the poll. If you have not responded, please do so now. All right, Jimmy, it's back to you.
Hi, everyone. So what the Ohio EPA grant is really aiming to do is that there's funding coming out there, but they want to put charging as most places that they can, spread out so that they're, you know, covering the major density of Ohio. And really encouraging that egg in the scenario of, you know, what comes first, the chicken or the egg. They want to put a bunch of eggs out there so that encourages the second half, more EV adoption to be coming into the state. There's other ways that cities have done to encourage more more charging to be installed is by using codes and regulations. So the city of Boston has actually done it where they require 5% of parking spaces in apartment buildings to have EV charging stations, with another 5% for make ready for the future. New York City does something similar, as well as Cincinnati, Ohio. Any new parking that is being funded through city money has to have 1% of spots to have EV charging and another 5% to have make ready, which I'll touch on what that means in a minute. I've also found the city of Columbus is considering such things. The city of Fairlawn has something similar on the books as well. But it's just more ways to encourage that adoption, really to get the infrastructure in place to have people more comfortable with providing or to buying charging or buying electric vehicles. The cup of coffee is kicking in. And then things to consider. So, as we'll talk on what the funding provides, but when we go through that, we want to consider how to plan for where this location is going to be, how to lay out the site for it, and really make it a successful deployment where people would want to use the station, and that we make the application for the grant as strong as possible. So for design and planning considerations, the cheapest way to get a project in is really to put it close to the power source. So the shortest electrical run that we can. It's best to have it, if it could be in front of a building entrance, to show off where that was located, that it is there. It shows that because if they're not an EV driver, they may not have the mobile app and not even recognize what these are. If it's up front, people will see it, know that your organization is supporting this technology. Also having great lighting, great security. Pooled water and irrigation is a funny one because people don't like plugging things in if they're standing in a mud puddle. I don't blame them. We've learned this our whole lives. This is very safe technology. It's built to be able to work in all weather conditions, including rain and water, but we want to keep pooled water out of those parking spots for that strictly visibility thing. And then considering things like signage, which is required from the EPA grant, wayfindage, they want to have the parking spot identified, and they also want to have people consider ADA accessibility. So when I have some quick wall mount and pedestal mount scenarios here that I'm going to flip through, but just know that, consider the whole parking lot arrangement when planning for EV charging, because the grant would like to see that you've considered this already when applying for the Ohio EPA. So here's one that just shows that there's a little aisle in between two parking spots. They're having the charger right there on this wall mount scenario. And as this picture alludes to, there's no common area where the vehicle plugs in. It's all sides of the vehicle. Some do it in the nose, some on the front passenger or front driver side, the back left or right, and even the new truck model I saw is supposed to be in the bumper. So the cords along, they can reach all sides of the vehicle, but still having it planned where you can have, like in this pole mounted scenario, in the center of 4 parking spots where you can highly utilize all spots around there in case the vehicle would pull in different directions. Some best practices, this is going to be farther down the road, but I'll touch just quickly onto this. Locate by power source, plan for dual port stations. Wall mount stations can be less expensive because less trenching into there, and then have make ready available for the future. A part of the Ohio EPA grant is they want to see if you have potential to add in more chargers later on by adding in additional conduit, having maybe a pull box at one location so that you can run more wire, more electrical runs for future charging stations. You have more panel capacity for future. It just makes it a stronger position for them.
Hey, Jimmy, I'm just going to quickly share our poll results from the last question as it relates to do cities or development sites currently have 1 or more EV charging stations? And so 27% currently do, with a good majority still looking at potentially planning for more charging stations. And with our next question, which I think is appropriate for talking about best practices for installation and so forth, especially as it relates to this grant, Is your city or development site planning any EV charging station installations? Hopefully this grant is going to incentivize some folks to look at this more seriously and budget for it for this year. We'll give it 30 more seconds.
I hope by the end of my presentation, if your answer was starting off as not sure or no, we at least move you up to either a no to a not sure or a not sure to a yes.
Right, I agree. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close it. If you haven't responded, please do so now. All right, so Jimmy, good news. We've got 41% that are planning for EV charging station installations, still 49%. And I think to your point, if we can move that needle and put that 49% into the yes category, we will have done our job today.
Woohoo! I think those are pretty good numbers, actually.
Okay, back to you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Right? I think so too.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. So I'm glad to hear that, everyone on the phone. So my next slide, I'm just going to touch one slide on who ChargePoint is, and then I'm diving right into what is the Ohio EPA grant, and spend the rest of the time working on that. So I didn't fully introduce myself, but Jimmy from ChargePoint. We're based out of San Jose, California. We have about 115,000 places to plug in globally, and about a 70% market share in the smart charging space. So we're a 12-year-old company, and we like to joke that we're in an 11-year-old market. So we're out there a little bit before the market was even coming together with having electric vehicles, and we're really just out there to make sure EV drivers and station owners have the best experience possible. So we work with site hosts to make the deployment great the first time. We have the experience back to doing it. I've been doing this for about 6 years, and an EV driver for a little bit longer than that. I want to make sure that you have a great deployment. We do what's called an open network, so our stations will be able to work on all the other networks out there, as well as to be able to use their card on other networks to make it the best possible experience. That's my 30-second elevator. And just some other, well-known brands that we worked with in the past to kind of show the scope and scale of what we worked on. And then diving right in, the EPA Grant Information. So as she had stated at the beginning of this presentation, there is $3.25 million available that they're going to be coming out with. They are putting this out there per county. So they do have, this came out about a month ago. The application is going to be due September 30th. I realize this is going to be a lot of text on this slide, but we'll be sending these out afterwards as well, so you have this information. But it's going to be the 26 priority counties. So this is essentially our largest counties, which I'll put up on the next page. But the target demographics for these is going to be publicly available stations. So these are ones that are not for like a single location. They want to be out in either the park systems or retail locations or mixed use ones. So it wouldn't be so much as like a workplace or an apartment building, but if those, like an apartment building that has a lot of retail on the bottom or also has like a couple of different tenants going on to it, it could apply for something like that. So the most important part, $7,500 per port or per plug. So for a dual port station, which is really the most common one that gets installed, that means about $15,000 for that project. So they did say in their informational packet that came out is that it could cover up to 100% of eligible costs for government or 80% of non-government. But really that the cost of a project that would go into that is likely going to exceed that $7,500 per port anyway, really depending on how much the installation is going to be. But so there'll likely be some out-of-pocket costs at the end of the day that wouldn't be covered by the grant. It's still a lot of money. It's a great opportunity, and the most that we've had in the region ever, I think. And then so I still think this is a great opportunity where you can get 80%, 75% of the total cost of the project covered for you. So here is a list of the eligible counties. You can see most of Northeast Ohio is all going to be covered. I mean, it's the priority 1 zones are smack dab in what we're sitting right here of Cleveland and the surrounding areas. So what they mean by they have a priority 1 and a secondary priority county is that this was based on where they got the money from. So if I back up a little bit, the money's coming from Volkswagen for Dieselgate, is what we call in the industry. But when they had cheated on the emission scandals, the funding then became, the court order came out to all the states, and the states had to spend this money in a certain way. So it's not actually paid for by Ohio. The Ohio EPA is taking these funds that were coming out of that trust and distributing them per the trust requirements, which means where most vehicles and most pollution was happening, that's where they want to have more electric vehicles going in by providing for charging stations to support those electric vehicles. So what they're doing is each one of these counties will be allocated $115,000, and then for all the applications that are going in there. They really are trying to spread out how much money they give out per project, and they want to, in a competitive grant situation, we can talk on how what would be the most strategic way to get that funding. But if they find that some of these secondary priority counties aren't requesting as much money, they may reallocate those funds back to the counties that are have the highest applications. As you can imagine, that's probably going to be the Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati counties, because that's where most of the people are. So if the surrounding counties don't have as much, they could reallocate the funds to those. So eligible sites, so it's publicly available, but they do have wording that they want it available for at least 16 hours a day, excluding park systems. Those can just be from normal park hours, like dawn to dusk type of things. And then we have some examples like parking facilitators, airports, shopping centers, grocery stores, gas stations, libraries, and that type of stuff. So really, places that have amenities for that works out great. They have somewhere to go when they get there. They have like a location on site that they want to go to. Ineligible sites. So like I was mentioning, workplaces, apartment buildings tend not to be eligible because they service only a single employee or a single customer. But there's a lot of opportunity for the ones that are open. So eligible costs. So any newly purchased level 2 stations and the associated equipment that goes with it. So it covers the installation portion of a project, the equipment portion of it, and then networking, which is how all these stations connect through a smart network, and then a service maintenance subscription that would go along with it. So a part of the requirements is that the stations be up and running for a 5-year period. So they want all the costs purchased up front. It's also most advantageous for the applicant to purchase all the stuff up front, get rebated for it, and they want this to be maintained for a 5-year period. So they are requiring a 5-year maintenance contract, as well as they all have to be a networked station, because they will be providing, the site host will be providing reporting back to the Ohio EPA on a 6-month basis. So they do need to be able to collect data, make trends, so the Ohio EPA can collect all this, analyze really how the project is going, and making sure that they met the trust requirements that came from the court decree. So conduits in there, parking lot signage. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jimmy, just really quick, couple questions. What are those network fees, and is that something additional as a plug-in that the station requires in order to provide that reporting back to the Ohio EPA?
So it is a part of the it's a part of the station, so you can have a station, a maintenance contract, and a network that goes along with that. That would be, so I think that answers the one question. So it's something that's built in that we can go along right with it. We make this really easy for people so they don't have to, try to develop that on their own somehow. So this is just something that will come along with it. And the cost just depends on the location, how they want to buy it. But all in all, I've seen project costs for like all the station, like a dual port station probably be most common. So I would ballpark with the installation, with a dual port station, a network, and the service agreement that goes along for the maintenance, you're probably looking at about $20,000, of which Ohio EPA would cover $15,000. So all in costs, you probably still have like some like $5,000 out of pocket, or 25% of that project. Just a ballpark without knowing what the installation would be, but that kind of gets you, situated.
Thank you.
So non-eligible costs that would be a part of that would be like leasing anything, or purchasing of the real estate or the property that it would be sitting on. Any capital costs like building upgrades, or new parking facilities, or admin or attorney fees, or taxes or permits. So generally speaking, they just want to keep it to the project itself, with the charging station, the installation of it, and then those pieces, parts that are needed for that.
Hey Jimmy, another question that came in. So a dual port station counts as 2 stations, or is that 1?
So it counts, they do it by plug, and that's how they fund it. So if a dual port would have 2 plugs, and that means it would be, that $7,500 times 2.
Great, thank you.
So project requirements, this is kind of some of this other stuff I might have touched on already, but they have publicly accessible, they have to be visible, they want them onto public maps. So through, if it's on a mobile app, to show that it's on a mobile app and it's open to the public. It must have already developed with facilities nearby, meaning that, it's just not a flat parking lot with nothing out there, or, putting it out in the middle of the woods just to get the grant money type of thing. They want locations that are safe, well lit, convenient, and ADA compliant, and then complies. I think this is just a catch-all, but complies with all regulations, laws, and standards. Preference given the locations that are scalable, future-proof, and that was that make-ready portion that I had mentioned before. But then also, they will have to sign on to a site host agreement. That's saying that they're going to have this equipment, provide this for a 5-year period, that it's up and running, it's available to the public during that same time period. And then if need be, at the end of that time, that they have a way to take that out if they choose to. So that's only, I think that'd be a smaller portion of the places if they chose that. But then, provisions regarding applicants' legal right to own and operate on that site, which just means that you're putting this on your own property and not somebody else's. But if you are putting it on somebody else's, that you have an agreement in place saying that you're allowed to be there, type of thing. So important dates to consider. So it did get released July 1st. Applications are due September 30th, and they are tentatively announcing of the awards come January. So from that date, as I said, there will be a contract that gets in place. There'll be, after you get that, you'll actually get a significant amount of time to get the project done, but they do give you a timeline there too. So if some municipalities or even organizations are working off a budget that will be for next year, luckily you can budget and plan for it this year, and then it may hit your fiscal budget, after it resets come January. So some benefits into being in there too. There are the application. Sorry. So we can help with the applications. They do have. They require just what the site is, what you're looking for as far as funding from the state. How much traffic is nearby there. They want to know like what is the highest traffic count within a quarter of a mile there, because their idea is they want to keep it in the busy locations where people are already going, as well as they want to keep it somewhat spread out from where other stations are already deployed, with like a max amount of locations that are going to be there. So there's not a max per site, there's not a max per applicant. You can do multiple applications, multiple sites. They like to see it all, and then if you have a preference to one side or another, you can just let them know in the application. I'm very curious to see how this poll comes out compared to our last one.
Jimmy, one question while people are responding. For a project that is going for LEED certification at any level, does an EV charging station provide any LEED credits?
Yes, it does. So you can get, I believe it's up to either 1 or 2 points for having what's called smart or network charging stations. So the same thing that this grant is applying for can help you get LEED credits as well. And I believe that's version, what's the most recent version? I want to say it's 4. But
4.1, yeah. Okay.
4.1, yes.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Last chance. So we've got 51% that are looking to apply for the Ohio EPA grant. Hopefully that 46% after today's webinar will be more intrigued and looking for more information. And as Jimmy said, Jimmy at ChargePoint is there to assist with those applications, as is the Greater Cleveland Partnership. So for any needs with those applications, please do not hesitate to reach out.
It's really cool that we moved people from no to not sure to yes. That's very exciting.
Yeah, I think we've definitely moved the needle a little bit. And just one quick question before we go to that that final slide there. If you are considering an EV charging station, what type might that be? So this is probably going to be more for those that are already planning it, but based on today's information, perhaps you now have a little bit more information to go off of. Give it 15 more seconds. If you haven't responded, please do so. All right. So level 2 for sure. A little bit with the DC fast charging stations. That's great. Very small percentage are not considering, and that's exciting to also see. And a question also came in, Jimmy. Did they? I'm not sure I fully understand the question, Eric. Do they make DC fast units? I'm assuming you're meaning ChargePoint. Do they make DC fast units? And if that's not the correct question, Eric, please chime in again.
So yes, we actually are, we do a full suite of products. We do a home, multifamily, fleet, public mixed use station, and then 4 different types of DC fast chargers. So we do in-house manufacturing, contract manufacturing, and a couple other ones, but we design our own equipment. We put it together with the network, so we're full suite, turnkey type of thing. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
Eric just clarified his question a little bit further. Very interesting question, and that is, do you make a level 2/DC fast combo unit? So could you have a two different portals, one of each on the same station?
So interesting question. Yes. So the answer is unfortunately no, and it's because of how the power comes into the station itself. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people that have both a level 2 and a DC fast charger on site, like Easton Town Center comes off the top of my head, but, and it's because of the input power. A level 2 station uses, I'll get real technical real quick, but 208 or 240, and it's just running on a single phase connection, where a DC fast charger is typically a 480 volt, 3-phase, and you're looking at like 100, 200 amps. And it's the vehicle, you'd need like it would be very technical, but there's actually two different stations for that reason though. And the use cases are different too, where, as we mentioned, that a DC fast charger is good for that quick in and out stop, or a level 2 is more for like topping off as you're going throughout your day to different locations. So they're kind of used differently as well.
Okay, great. Any last questions? All right. Well, thank you, Jimmy, for sharing so much great information and insight with us today. And thanks to everyone for participating in today's webinar. I'm really excited to see how many people were able to join us really at a last minute. But as you can see, I think EV is here to stay, and we hope to see the momentum for EV accelerate here in Northeast Ohio. And hopefully your community and your development site is going to get engaged, participate in that grant. And do know that the Greater Cleveland Partnership and ChargePoint are both here to assist you with those grant applications. Jimmy, it looks like we have one last question that's come in, and that is, could you give some ranges as to what does it cost a user to get a charge? And I know this is such a variable because we've seen so many different business models, but if you could perhaps highlight some best examples that you've seen that cities or a shopping center has done.
That's a great question. Honestly, I probably should have put that in the slide to talk about that too, because it's that important. So there's a couple of things. I like to use an example of like me charging at home when I use my home station and how much it costs me versus like if I'm out in a public station. So a public station uses 6.5 kilowatts. If I were to do that at my house and get the same amount of energy for 1 hour of charge, that 1 hour of charge would cost me about 80 cents worth of electricity that I pay in my house per hour. So a commercial location gets a cheaper electrical rate. They're probably paying about 65 to 70 cents an hour, so it's a little bit less than that. Most locations I see are about 75 cents to $1.50 an hour. Ohio State University is $1.25. What was another location that I was just talking with? City of Worcester, Ohio does $1 an hour, I'm pretty sure. And then on the high end of that range, I've seen it's about $2.90 per hour of charge. And then on the low end, it's just free. The city of Lakewood leaves it for free at the moment, although they do have plans to change that in the future. So there's some of them that just go with that route because they just want to encourage the adoption of it right now, realizing that maybe 70 cents an hour for electricity isn't a whole bunch at the moment, but they will want to eventually charge. But I'd say on average, to circle full circle for you, about $1 to $1.50 an hour is how much people would charge for electricity on a level 2 station. I break that out because level 2 is for this grant application. On the DC fast charger, they charge significantly more because the power costs more, you're doing it at a higher rate, and they can simply just absorb a lot more power at once. So that rate is higher. I see most of that is probably like $11 for a half hour or $15 for a half hour, somewhere in that range for that DC fast charger.
Jimmy, I'm curious, have you seen in a shopping center location where a developer has perhaps passed through some of the costs of the charging stations to their tenants?
Oh, absolutely. So by having using it as like that common area charge where they put it in and just pass it off, as long as it's like a reoccurring charge, from my understanding, that they can then add it into that common area as like a landlord provided benefit for, you know, the tenants in that area. Yes. And some of them will still try to recoup some of that cost, so it lowers the burden on the tenants. And some of them will just leave it for free to then just encourage people to come to their store. They're more likely to stay longer. We actually did a study with Target that shows Target customers spend about $1 a minute while they're in the store. So every minute they can get a Target customer to stay there longer is directly relational to a cost that or a revenue that they could get. So EV drivers on average spend an extra 20 minutes in the store, which netted them an extra $20 of visits. So some landlords just want to provide it as that, or some try to recoup some costs. Mm-hmm.
And how about maintenance? So after the first 5 years, what then happens? Do you do a renewal of that maintenance contract? And what are the ongoing maintenance costs associated with it?
Yeah, so the site host has that option to renew a maintenance contract if they want to. At that point, it's about $740 a year per station for a maintenance contract. So if they choose to, they can extend that. There's also price breaks for buying an additional 5 years in advance, and then that brings down that per year cost. So whatever they like to choose at that time, they can do.
Okay. We got a question about providing the link to the Ohio EPA grant, and yes, we will do so today when we send out the recording with the slides. And another question, do you provide metering and billing software? Is that part of the network contract?
Yes, absolutely. So within the station itself, it has an internal meter that's able to track and count all the electricity that's provided through there, that it's dispensing outwards. And then as well as having the capability of billing customers, capability of being on the mobile app, doing the reporting, or even having advanced software features, such as like queuing people in line. We call it waitlist. Additionally, as new cars come off, like new manufacturers develop new cars coming off the assembly line, we actually test those internally ahead of time and then push out updates and software patches as needed for those vehicles so that the station does over-the-air updates and just brings your station up to date so that you're not getting stuck behind by having a station out there that no longer functions with some new vehicles on the market. So that's all included in what goes into a network subscription. So, and 24/7 driver support too. Yeah.
That's important.
It is, and I should have touched on it first.
I'm not seeing any further questions at this time, and so with that, we hope you found today's webinar really engaging and informative and has encouraged many of you to participate in the grant or at the very least begin your planning stages to bring EV to your sites. If you have thoughts to share, please let us know. For information about upcoming webinars outside of this today, please visit gcpartnership.com/events. And this concludes today's session. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.